we are developing more skills with writing interview packages. So some of the basics of writing interview packages that you need to make sure you know. Well, the basics all starts with a good interview. So if you don't have a good interview, your package is going to be a big struggle. So you need to make sure to get a good interview. But after the interview, you need to be sure to review the material and find quotes and facts. So you need to know the difference between what makes a good quote and what makes a good fact. Some facts may not be in your interview. Some you may know from prior knowledge, or you may have to look up or ask in follow-up questions. So be ready to find any extra facts that can help lead into your quotes and explain them a little bit better. You'll need to organize your story, so use your storytelling skills to think, what do people need to know next? And that should be the thing that you'll share next. And you'll need to put in good transitions. So I have another session that goes into more depth on what's good quotes, what's good facts, and how do you transition between them? How do you lead into a quote? What do you do with a fact? How do you paraphrase? How do you summarize? How do you organize your story? And kind of the do's and don'ts. Don't give play-by-play. Don't restate what was just said. Don't steal the spotlight from what's about to be said by saying basically what they're about to say. And here are some great ways to transition. With a bridge, connecting the two thoughts. So you basically say, this relates to this. A fact that clarifies the quote and kind of leads into the next section, or trimming the fat where you interviewed somebody who's wordy and they kind of talked a lot. You can summarize what they said there and just lead into the best part of the quote. All of that should be practiced in another session. This session focuses on, in that session it was an in-depth interview focusing on one person and their perspective. Maybe I might get a couple of interviews from side people, but it was mainly that person. So I felt there's a need to show a BroadBrush package, which probably happens more often with events around Mesquite High. You interview this person and this person and this person about their experience, and then you want to share it all. So with an in-depth interview and with a BroadBrush package, there's just a little variation you do in your approach with editing. So with an in-depth interview, you just listen to the person, find the best quotes and facts, organize them, introduce the speaker, and tell the story in a logical order. With the BroadBrush package, you have already interviewed a lot of people, and you're going to pick the best from each person and look for similarities and differences to broadly cover the event. So you're going to try to see how the things that they have said connect. So I have gathered some interviews that my students did with different people on the COVID experience, and we're going to see if we can put those together in a package. So first step is to listen to the interviews. Good quality check. If you have a lot of interviews, you could go ahead and eliminate those with bad audio and bad framing or mumbly people. If you don't, you got to try to work with the best of each. And most of the time, since we're students, that may be what we're having to do. So I have 8 video clips here. And what I do for each one is I got to know what's in the interview to be able to know what order I'm going to put it in. I already made a little table that shows all the interviews done. And it has the name of each person. I've organized the students on one side, or student-aged people, teenagers, and then the parents on another side, because I already see that as a connection. I could say, for students, the main concerns were this, this, and that, and then have some quotes from the students. Whereas parents had more economics on their mind and some quotes from the parents about economics. So it's a nice, easy way to kind of divide. So I've already listened to some of these interviews, and I basically just want to show you what you need to do. You listen to the interview. Now let me say, when you look at this interview, you're going to think it's about something relating to the bedroom. It looks nice, but if we really wanted the interview to look better for this COVID thing, unless he's talking about the bedroom, we want to put him against that gray wall there or something. or where he has the dresser in the background, not the bed, so that it seems to make more sense. Anyway, I'm just going to listen and I'm going to think, is this a good quote? Is this a good fact?
And how has the coronavirus affected you? I can't go outside and play with my friends anymore.
So, for the sake of time, I've already done this. What I do is, that's where he started his answer. I press I and press O at the end of his answer. If it sounds like something I'll use or something I might want to know later to refer to. And then I click it and drag it down here. And I have it down here, and you can see if I zoom closer, this is the clip with his name. I also, in my document, type a brief description of what it is, so I can kind of see what I'm working with just by looking at it. And then I move on, and I will say that quote, it's not really novel. He just says he has to do school online, and what does he say about playing outside? Anyway, pretty much the same thing any other kid is going to say. So, not extremely novel, but sometimes you have to choose a quote from somebody just because you want more faces in your package. And so this may be the best we got, and we want to include his perspective, and his perspective is a nice way to describe everybody's perspective, so we could lead into it that way. Anyway.
How are you adapting to online school?
We don't keep her questions. We only keep his answers. So always end point with I after the question, before the answer. And we can get rid of the so I there.
I don't really like it because it's like homework.
One thing I'll point out, remember in interviewing, right here he's saying he doesn't really like it. Because we were listening to the interview, we know what it is he doesn't really like. But later, we may not know because we took it out of context. So we may make a note to what he doesn't really like in our notes here. Or we may remember, but we're going to have to explain that if we use that clip so that everybody knows what he's referring to by it, because he doesn't say. So make sure when you're doing the interview, if you can, that you get the subject to say what it is they're talking about. So get them to answer in complete sentences. Okay. So I carried on with that. I took every answer from him. I went to this guy. And I let Asher Harris be blue. But this guy, I thought he gave a pretty good quote. He has a pretty good perspective. He could use better composition. Remember, we want the eyes on the top thirds. The main problem is this.
For this whole past month of coronavirus.
There's music in the background. So again, key factor, make sure your interview has a good setting. There's no distracting audio because we really want to use this. He talks about how people have not been very respectful. They've been kind of ransacking grocery stores. And it's kind of long, but it's just that one quote. And so I'll mark that as a cue. And I kind of listed what he said there. So all you need to do is brief explanation of what it is in the quote. You don't need to transcribe the whole thing. But that way, later, when you're trying to figure out your package, you can kind of tell who says what. And that's what we're looking for. So, Lainey's mom.
So, as of March 22nd, all salons were mandated to shut down. So, I haven't been able to work since then.
You can see that's what she says. Hairstylists can't work under mandate, I may say, because that may come up again. And here's another quote from her.
Just trying to stay busy with my kids and housework.
And she kind of says what she's trying to do. Let me show you how to label. You just right click, choose label, and I think this was tan. So that in the end, when I start using people's stuff, I can go, oh, I have a nice mix throughout. Or you could organize it where you have one person's perspective and then another's, but it's easier to find people's stuff if you label it by color. So for this guy, I'm taking this out of a package a student already made. So basically this was the other type of package, in-depth interview on one person instead of BroadBrush. But we're going to use this for a BroadBrush. So you can see his interview's a minute 40. It has some nice B-roll, but what I did is I just listened and chose, because he's kind of a little hard to hear, I chose the best of what was in there, and we'll choose from that. So don't feel like you have to annotate everything. You just want the best. So what do we have here from Mr. Otta?
Was the business because of this virus. So people are laid off. So all of us left. So nobody have a job.
Okay. So right here, he's talking about a business. This is his business, I believe. And it said he was, the B-roll, which was included in his original package, said he was manager of a thrift store for 15 years. I went ahead and typed that because we don't want to forget that. That may be something that will be relevant for ours. But notice, this is what I want you to think about when you're doing BroadBrush packages. How does this compare to what we've already heard? He and Lainey's mom are talking about their jobs being affected. So that's one thing that they have in common. So we can get ready to write in our package, for adults, many jobs were affected. And then we could introduce Lainey's mom from hairstylists like, I don't remember her name. I'm going to type Lainey's mom right now. And then quote from Lainey's mom to managers like Steve Otta. And then quote from him. So I'm hoping you'll see that these are the comparisons we're looking for. Hopefully we'll see as it comes along some comparisons between what the students say and some comparisons in the activities. You can see I made note that Steve Otta said he sleeps most of the day. He also said cuts grass and manages yard more. And Lainey's mom said just trying to do stuff around the house. So I can bundle all those together and lead into them. I'll go more into depth on the script later, but for now what you want to do is listen to your interview, figure out the key parts, type them, and then look at all of the interviews and compare. See what they have in common, what they can contrast, because that's going to help us write the script.